Welcome everyone to Let's Play Advanced Tactics Gold. This will be the start of a Let's Play on this map that I just randomly generated, and I edited a bit, but I'll talk about that in a second. It's a 3-player map. I'm doing a single town start. As you can see, we don't have the map explored yet. Well, we know what is there, we just haven't conquered it. And I'll be playing against two AIs, which are starting at war with each other. To my west I have Germany, and to the northeast I have China. I'm playing myself as Japan. So let me just talk about the regimes real fast. Japan has 20% bonus to morale, so if I click on my headquarters you can see my morale is 60 instead of 50 as it normally would be. And aside from that, they have kamikazes, which won't come into play on this map because it's not really a sea map. There's not going to be naval battles. But even more so because I never build them anyway. If you're going to build kamikazes, they're just going to blow themselves up every time you attack. And in my opinion, that's no way to use your production points. Especially because they cost the same as a dive bomber, so I don't see the upside. But for flavor, it's nice to have, I guess. The Germans have the V-Rocket series. If I go to Decision Room here, this is our tech tree. I'm going to scroll down to Strategic Rockets. Rocket V1, V2, V3. This is available for the Germans, but I don't think that they'll be able to build it. We are starting with high cost research, costly research, and Stone Age, which means if I switch over to production for a second, if I go to infantry, you can see that there's no options really available here, and for vehicles I only have the Jeep. Everything else has to be researched. To compensate for that a little bit, I did give 500 political points above what the normal starting amount is, which will allow the AIs and myself a little bit of a cushion for an initial investment. Okay, the Germans have that V-Rocket stuff. I don't think we'll be seeing their super heavy tanks, which I think they also have. And the last thing is the Chinese. They have militia, and militia aren't bad, so let me zoom in and click on my rifle. And if I do this compare button, you can't see this dialogue that's brought up, but it allows me to select what unit I'd like to compare against, and I'm going to choose militia. Okay, so combat stats, you can see that militia, basically they attack at half the strength of infantry, but they defend at about 2/3, or 3/4 against armor. Now, this armor difference does get exaggerated as the game moves forward because as you upgrade your riflemen, which is a good idea to do, they increase in hit points but also specifically in their attack and defense against armor. And militia are not going to they're not going to receive that bonus. So the general rule of thumb is militia are kind of useless against armor, and they're just to hold specific defensive positions. Alright, so that's the regimes. Almost everything about the regimes is going to be identical, just those little flavors, and like in the Chinese case you'll see a lot of militia, so that's kind of nice. And the Anglo-Saxons, or the British-American regime, they have rangers, which you can also make pretty wide use of. But that all being said, let's jump into our actual turn. We're starting right next to Misato and Hamura. I should apologize right now for how I'm going to pronounce these foreign cities, really how I'm going to mispronounce them. What do we want to do on this first turn? I just want to expand. The name of the game in the beginning of a one-town start is just to jump as quickly as you can to all your cities, which are going to build your production base. If I go over to location here, we see 0 out of 2,000 for structural of Misato. Now, as soon as I take it, that's going to start auto-repairing at 300 per turn. And every point of structure is 4 points of production. So this will be at 0 on the first turn, but after it auto repairs once, it'll be at 1200. And I just want to jump as quickly as I can to Misato and Hamura. I can take both those on the first turn. Then I'm going to spread my way over to Matsu and Fuji over here. And a little bit north, I have Kitakami. Then I have the Chinese cities. Now, foreign cities don't give you access to your normal production. They only allow you to build political points, which basically is for research or for upgrading supplied like your resources. And they can also build resources like raw. They can build like what they call synthetic oil or recycled raws. But it's really a waste of production capacity, in my opinion. You should be getting all the supplies you need from the map itself. Okay, that all being said, let's go ahead and create our first unit. Let me do this first one really slow. I'm going to do make new unit. I usually use the N key on the keyboard. I want it to be a formation, and I want this HQ to be the HQ of this unit. So now the first division has been created. It has the Supreme Headquarters as its HQ. That's just the structure of a division. The paperwork's been filed, you know, the shell of a division has been created, but it has no combat value until I actually add subformations to it. So I'm going to hit transfer, normally T. I'm going to move just, let's say, 4 rifles into this division. The reason why I'm moving so few is just because these are only going to be used to spread my borders. And I'm just going to hit M to move. Let me go ahead and show you it this way. M to move, and M to move again. Now you notice that my borders expanded everywhere except for around this city. And that is going to happen whenever I come up against a resource hex or a city hex. My zone of control does not automatically incorporate that into my nation's borders. So in order to capture the supply hexes or the city hexes, you actually have to enter the city itself. Now on the following turn, as we'll see, if I'm just stuck here outside of the raw, I won't conquer it this turn. But at the beginning of the next turn, my borders will naturally expand to encompass it. That's just the same as if I had moved into it the next turn. It doesn't give you the advantage of having owned that raw on the, even though it appears as if you owned it at the beginning of the turn, it didn't count as part of your production for that turn. I'll show that a little bit better at the end of this turn and the beginning of next. So let's do this a little faster now. And make unit, formation, select headquarters, spacebar instead of checkmark, click my HQ, T to transfer, and click my new one, and put another 4 rifle. I think I started saying that I'm using 4 rifles, but it doesn't really matter. I could just as easily have used 1. There's no combat going on in the beginning, so I'm just conquering territory. Now, the reason why I'm trying to spread out, obviously I do want to conquer these cities as fast as possible, but I'm going to go ahead and create some other divisions. And why am I going to do that? Because there's an action point penalty. You see this plus 10, plus AP 10. That means it requires an additional 10 action points to move into hexes that you don't already control. I kind of abstract this to you move a little slower if you have to scout out new territory, or maybe the maps aren't well developed. I don't know. You can abstract it however you'd like, but the bottom line is the game mechanic is that if you haven't already controlled a hex, or if it's still your hex but it's in the enemy zone of control, it will require an extra 10 action points to move into. Okay, so let's create a few more divisions of just 4 rifles. And as we can see, if I move up and then move up again, I don't conquer that oil square. And again, another one, another 4 rifles. I won't be able to conquer this raw. Again, oops, I did hit HQ. That's not what I wanted to do. Well, I'll go ahead and leave this guy since I just created him, but that was a mistake. There's no undo button, sadly. We'll just leave him there. I will need HQs eventually, but just not right now. So now I have to make sure I'm selecting my Supreme HQ. It's kind of nice that they color code different HQs with the sidebar. That's very nice. Nice little touch. Alright, and I think with the last 2, I'm going to expand a little bit to the west. One, I'm going to move here just so I expand my borders very close to this oil. I'll probably even, just with the border growth, I'll probably even capture this oil on the next turn. Because that restriction about the zone of control and capturing supply points and cities, it does not apply for the how your borders expand at the beginning of the turn, which I'll show you, but just as a reminder that I won't even have to actually move into this oil hex to capture it. Sometimes just moving close enough is enough. Okay, and then one last formation with 4 rifles. And we'll move this guy this way just to push my borders this way. I don't need to move to the southeast because this is the edge of the map, and there's nothing of strategic value here, so there's no point in expanding there any faster. There is a point in expanding further to the northwest and to the west, because if I'm considering raiding into the German cities and maybe capturing them before the Germans come, I need to do that as quick as possible. Okay, well that concludes this turn as far as what I wanted to move. I need to set up production though, which I actually already did in my capital. Now I was going to build horses, but on second thought I feel like engineers are going to be more important if I'm going to have to build supply through this mountain chain, or at least over the river somewhere, if I want to move over on the other side of the river. Because as we'll see, this river just almost restricts supply flow completely. So I'm going to go ahead and build 20 engineers instead of 20 horses, so that those guys can start building up their engineering points. Okay, good. The last thing I want to mention is, if you ever see these gray cities, that's a very bad sign. That means that there's no headquarters associated with this city. That means if I was to build something, everything built would just go to waste. It wouldn't be collected by my headquarters. If I built units, they wouldn't appear in the city. So it's really a bad thing. And there's no in-game alert to let you know that. You just have to discover it from experience. Now these are now red because they're not at their maximum structure. But eventually they'll turn green in like 7 turns when they finally build up to their full 2,000. And if we go to production, we see that they're at 0 points. I might as well set up what I want here. I typically like political points on top and supplies second, so I'll just go ahead and set this up. And I even know what I want for my second turn. It's going to be 40-60, because I want to avoid these fractions. Any other fraction, any other percentage of political points on the second turn will give me a fraction. I'll show that in a little bit. Okay, there's the supply, 40-60. Fine, and that's all fine. The same thing happened here. Like, there was 0.7 left over from the first turn. I don't know why, because, I mean, this is the first turn, but like the 0th turn. It's just some mechanic for how the game is made. I'm not going to go into it, but there's 0.7 left over for whatever reason. So I made mine 1333.3, so that 0.3 and 0.7 will cancel out. Then I won't have to worry about leftovers. I don't like leftovers. I mean, I do if it's food, but not decimal points in this game. And that really does conclude everything I want to do for this turn. So let's go ahead and hit next turn. The very first thing we'll do is kind of check out what did the AI do. Let's see. So the Germans expanded to the northeast and captured Brandenburg, so they have 1 city. I'm in very good shape because I captured 2 cities on my first turn, which is pretty rare. And the Chinese didn't happen to capture Shinji. They also didn't capture the Ra, even though that was definitely, it was possible for them to do so, but they didn't. Okay, but that's fine. Moving back to us. And just like I said, the borders expanded to capture the Ra, the oil, and even this oil. Now, the action point penalty still applies because technically that happened at the beginning of this turn, and you have to have owned the tile for a whole turn in order to get rid of the action point penalty. So we can see this hex I secured last turn, so there's no action point penalty. But the oil was something where my borders expanded this turn, so it still suffers from that penalty. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move my riflemen back. There's no point in them being out there. And what I'll actually do is, every time I move one back, I'll transfer the units into one of the rifles that are there, and I'll get this blank division again. Because all these rifles were doing was just pushing out my borders a little bit to prepare for the jeeps and the cavalry. Now this blank division I'm going to use as my new division for cavalry and jeeps. I know that I'm going to want to push southwest, so let's push over here, let's say. I think that's good. It's kind of interesting sometimes to see how they're tracing the supply. 15, 15, 45, 70, 95. Yeah. So I think it's, if we do this, yeah, okay. I actually wanted to move there, but it doesn't matter. The same. It's the same. I'll just move one right here then, and let's do the same thing. Let's move this rifle back, transfer into the other rifle. Now transfer from this HQ into this one. 4 cavalry. And we'll launch these guys off over here. So I think... So if it says 70 here and here, I'm not sure which way it'll route exactly, but I'm going to force it to move here first and then move here. And actually it doesn't make a difference because when I move here I capture that hex with zone of control anyway. That's good. And you can see my borders are just going to bubble out this way on their own. I don't need to worry about it. Alright, another rifle, please move back and transfer all those out. Transfer more cavalry in. Another thing I should mention now, because it's going to become relevant, is if I move this cavalry up this road, I can move it this far. So that requires 95 of their movement to move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it's 5 because obviously there's a 10 action point penalty to move. So it cost 55 to get here because this hex cost 15 plus 10. If I look, this one... Wait, it didn't. Okay, so 15, 30, 45. Oh, so I have 55 left, right. So it cost 45 to get this far. But now it's going to cost 25 to do each hex because I have this penalty. So I'm going to have 25. Down here in the description bar, you can see move cost 25, 25. That's all we can move. Now, I've moved this far, and technically this is friendly territory, but again, that action point penalty doesn't go away until the next turn, so even moving multiple units down the same path, it doesn't help. Each of them has to, like, scout, quote-unquote, or whatever the abstraction is. Let's keep moving some units back. All rifles, transfer out, and transfer more cavalry in. Now, where does this cavalry want to go? I want to capture Matsu as fast as possible. I'm going to send some jeeps down the road just in case that's faster. I'm going to send this guy down this road and then down this mountain chain, little like large hills, low mountains. There's 2 other paths I'm considering though. One down this raw to here and one down this way to here. I'm just going to send cavalry in all different directions. One, I'll be blobbing out my borders anyway, which isn't that important. Remember, borders, it doesn't really matter unless it captures a strategic resource for you. And it's important to remember that because I myself oftentimes get lost in, like, why am I doing this? There's no point in capturing territory just for the sake of capturing territory. And it's a refreshing reminder that this game leaves you with, that sometimes you'll find yourself pushing out on a border, going out of supply, for no reason. There's no benefit. And this is the last of our cavalry divisions. We'll move this guy here. So one of these 3 will probably get to Matsu first. They may all 3 arrive on the same turn with just various action points remaining, in which case this whole experiment didn't matter. The last thing we want to do, I think all our riflemen are used. Yeah, so how did this guy get 24? Did I have, oh, I had 6, of course. So all of our riflemen are back, so now I'm just going to create new divisions here. And I want the Supreme headquarters still as my HQ. And now I'm going to create units of 2 jeeps and 2 rifles. There's no good reason for why I'm doing this. Again, I could have just used 1 cavalry or 1 rifleman, and I could just as easily have used 1 jeep. But this does demonstrate the interesting mechanic that each jeep can carry 2 weight, and typically your land forces are 1 weight each. So you can see that a unit with 2 jeeps carries 4, and with 2 riflemen, 2 of those 4 will be carried. So this will still move at a wheel. In other words, I can carry up to 4 infantry on this without it moving any slower. So might as well, for that reason, I might as well just use it with 2 riflemen, because these will eventually be on the front lines scouting around, and the rifles will give them a little bit of staying power. I'm just going to go ahead and do this 3 more times. So that I can branch out to the east. Here's another one, move them together. So you can see that although the land has already been explored, they can only move the same distance. Now I'm sending 4 to the east, and I'm only going to send 2 to the north. I'll demonstrate why this is in a second, but basically it comes down to branching paths. If I want to explore as much territory as possible, and the jeeps are really restricted to roads, they don't they don't move faster than cavalry except for on roads. So that's where their advantage lies, and in order to use them correctly, we want to stay on the roads. Moving to the east, there's a lot of branching paths for the roads. So I want 4 because there's essentially 5 different resources over here, but this raw is really close. I think we might even be able to pick it up with a guy and keep moving on the same turn, and then maybe send him towards the oil, because for me oil is just less important. Otherwise, somebody's going to go into Fuji but keep up going to the raw, but I need a separate person to go to this other raw. So essentially it's just for parallel exploration. That's why I'm sending 4 over there. And only 2 to the north, because if I go north, there's no branching paths until I get to Huludao. And even then, it's just a decision to move west or east. So I only need 2, and I'll already have captured Kitakami, which is my main strategic objective to the north. Let's create some more units now, the 2 last jeeps. And after this, I'll just briefly change up my production, and I think we're done with the second turn now too. The last of the jeeps with 2 more rifles. Good, I do have the 20 engineers, which I'll want to move out as well. Okay, that's all set. Now production, I already did this last turn, but you can see that 40% happens to give me exactly 1 political point. I don't like dealing with these leftover fractions, so that's why I'm choosing that. And it gives me an even number of supplies. So that's what I'm doing for Masato and Hamura. And now, what does Yokohama want to do? Well, I'm going to switch up this one so it also follows the same pattern of political points on top and supply second. The reason I'm doing that is if I have enough cities that I need to start using my production overview, I like to have it so the columns line up. And these columns are just in the order of what they're being built over here. So if I switch this over to engineers and this one to jeeps, you can see that the order is reversed over here as well. So that's why I like to keep things in specific orders. It makes it easier to look down a single column of items. Okay, but I actually don't want what I just selected for my production there. I don't need more jeeps. Those are good for now. In fact, I'll just go ahead and delete the whole slot. What I do want are more engineers, and actually, I want some horses. So let's just get 10 horses, 0 everything else, and 90 engineers. I need a lot of engineers for all the bridges and supply that I'm going to need for over here, and I need them for early upgrades to these raws. The earlier I upgrade them, the more resources they'll generate for me over time. So they're only 20, they only generate 20 at level 1, but if I expend 40 political points, as well as some other things like supplies and engineering points, these will give me up to 60 on level 2. So that's pretty good, 3 times as many. Let's create a new unit, and this will be my first engineering unit. So there they are, the 20 engineers. I think I'm going to go ahead and move these guys west right away because the cavalry is already pushing the borders of supply. If I hit F5 or just push this, we can see that anything across this river is going to be almost totally out of supply. You can look in the description bar here. Anything under 100 is 100% supplied, so you're perfect. 100 to 150 suffers a 25% penalty, which we don't have an example of. And after that, from 150 to 200 is blue, which is 50% supply penalty, and from 200 to 250 is 75% penalty. That's really bad. So I'm going to need some, an engineer over here to build bridges and roads and stuff to get supply through the mountains. And let's go ahead and do that by moving this guy all the way over here. Good. I think this concludes. So this rifleman has 24 rifles. What do I want to do? I do have a few rifles left over. I could make... It's a good question. I will eventually want to have a solid defense set up in Huludao and probably in the German cities that I capture. 24 rifles isn't much, but I guess if they're left for a while to entrench, so their entrenchment here is 100. Yeah, I think I'll do that. So I'll go ahead and move these rifles out. I'll move those west, and the ones left in here, I'll create one more new division for, and these guys are going to move north. Take them all. I'll just start moving up. Okay, well that concludes all the things that I want to get done this turn. We'll go ahead and save here. Actually, I'll end the turn first. So let's end the turn and see what the AI does, and then I'll finish this episode at the beginning of my next turn. Okay, so the things I wanted were built. Yay. Only 20 ore, and this is, I don't have a problem with oil typically because I use horses and I don't build tanks until a little bit later. But I do have problems with raws, so I'll have to pick those up. Let's just see what the Germans did. They branched out to these 2 raws, and they're not on this main road yet, but I mean, I guess they are at this raw, so that means I still have time to get over to these cities before they do. And let's look over at the Chinese. They have now captured Shinji and both the raw and the oil over here, so that's a little bit better for them. And I still think I'll be able to get to Huladao before them. Great, so I'm going to conclude this episode here. Thanks for watching, and I'll pick this up in the next episode.